Okay, I'm going to show you how to do a little bit of diagnostics on your primary and secondary receiver on going into a central box and tell which one is being used and how often, and you can use it for checking whether one antenna is set up better than the other, and in the case of a Cortex Pro you can tell which whether the Cortex Pro is pumping data in or not. We'll talk about that in another video. But anyways, here's what you do. Unfortunately, there's some hidden telemetry in the Cortex Pro, in the CB200 that you can't put out as telemetry, and I'm going to show you how to do some sanity checks on your system. So we're going to go to Applications, we're going to go to Jeti Box, we're going to go into the central box. You're going to push down, you're going to go one right to the max min values, and you can see all these values also in the Device Explorer, but this is an important value here. This actually is telling you oops, sorry. Here's the one I wanted. So right here, you have the time since this central box was reset, meaning the same reset that clears the capacity totals, where RX1 EX bus signal was valid or RX2 EX bus signal was valid. And you can see that I basically had about 13 seconds of failure on RX1 where RX2 was probably controlling because there's a little more RX2 time. And if I go to the next one down, here's the percentages based on the total time since the last reset of this CB200. Okay, now what's interesting is it would be nice to actually see this on the screen while you're flying, to maybe do some diagnostics, look at antenna locations. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to navigate back to the time one, and I'm going to leave it here. I'm going to go back out, I'm going to go to displayed sensors, I'm going to go and create a new display, add a Jeti box display at the end of my telemetry list, back out, go over to my last page, and now I can see that while I'm flying or just after I land. Now, let's say I'm ready to fly and I want to do a controlled test. There's two ways. If you've already got a switch configured for your CB200 to clear your battery capacities, you throw it and these two times zero out and start counting again. I don't do that. I only change it when I change my battery. So I go into Device Explorer every time, and I go to max min. You'd set your switch up here if you wanted to, but I'll clear now. Oh, before I do that, just look, all this data is here. Here's the max mins, the temperatures, and just so you see at the bottom of that list, those times and percentages are there too. So they're in the Device Explorer if you want to just go in and check, but if you want it sort of on your screen live, the Jeti box is the solution. So backing out, max min, go to clear now, and say yes, and back out, and now we're counting up. Now, I am going to go into my model right now. Here's my primary, and I'm going to pull out the cable. Actually, this is a Cortex Pro setup, so that's actually my primary receiver. I have a secondary receiver going into the Cortex Pro, and RX1 is the gyro out signal from the Cortex Pro. My RX2 is a primary receiver clone as a backup just in case I have an issue with my Cortex Pro. Here is my Cortex Pro. This is RX1 that I'm about to pull. I'm going to pull that out of the CB Ready, set, now. So now, when you're using the Cortex Pro, and the way I've got it set up, remember my RX2 is a clone. I have no telemetry coming back, so when RX1 fails, I have no telemetry. But when I plug it back in now, look at the differences in times. If I pull out my clone right now, which is a R3 in clone mode and EX bus out, it's a clone of my primary receiver going into the Cortex Pro. If I pull that out, you will see RX1 continues the count, RX2 now has stopped, and I will plug that back in. Sorry for the shakes. Give me a second. Trying to find the pins. Easier said than done while you're filming. Okay, here we go. And back in. And now RX2 is counting. And back in. So you can see I was off RX2 there for, I don't know, about 10 seconds. So there's a couple things you can do. If you were just doing a standard Central Box 200 and you really want to know if your antennas are good on one versus the other, well, you could just look at the relative times and percentages. And if you're using a Cortex Pro and you're doing it like me with a clone backup on RX2, you can actually see what percentage of time the Cortex Pro is controlling. Now remember, these are times, and they're total times, and if you really want to see percentage, you've got to look at the total time you've been running since the reset. So if you wanted to know what percentage, you might want to go back to your your Jeti box and look at it on a percentage basis, because neither one of these right now will actually be 100%, because they were both pulled out and the total central box time since reset is different. Okay, anyways, it's a useful diagnostic that I don't think many people know about, and I'm just going to go look at one other thing. If you really want to know what your central box currents are off your battery, don't trust your peak currents. Never trust what you get at the TX, because the central box actually samples at a much higher rate than the bus allows it to send. And if you go to this max-min telemetry here, I am just going to wiggle. I've only got a dual servo rudder here, two BLS 172s. I'm going to give this a quick kick to the right and left, and I'm going to show you how to get your real currents. So right now we haven't done anything. Here we go. Right, left, right, left, right, left, right, left, right, left. Now, so just look. Right now we got 3.6 and 5.19. Okay, now if I go back out to my telemetry and I look at my one central box, you can see it's only 2.6 where it was 5, and only, what is that, 1.88 where it was 2.3. So because the peak sampled in the central box was off the sample that was sent on the EX bus. So you really want to know what your peak currents are. Don't look at min-max here. Go into Device Explorer or the Jeti Box Explorer and look at what's truly in the CB after you fly. Otherwise, you're probably reading statistically, from what I can tell, half or less of the true peak current. Okay, anyways, that's it. Bye.